Heroes, Chapter 5. The rec centre is boarded up and abandoned now. The words Frenchtown Rec Centre faded and barely visible above the front door. The door's red paint has turned a faint, sickly pink. My caves begin to run and my scarf is damp, and after a moment I realize it's not the moisture from my caves that has dampened my scarf. It's a bad luck place, people had said. A place of doom, others added. In the old days it had been known as Grenier's Hall, and the children of Frenchtown, myself among them, often heard its tragic story. Not a tragic story at the beginning, however. The hall had been a place of happy events, gala dances and fancy balls to mark occasions like New Year's Eve and the 4th of July. It became a traditional place for wedding receptions, the bridal party marching the length of 3rd Street to the hall after the wedding mass at St. Jude's. Until the wedding of Marie Blanche-Tourraine. Marie Blanche married a handsome Irisher by the name of Denis O'Brien from the Plains North Monument, after breaking off her engagement to Hervey Rochelle, the shipping room foreman at the Monument comb shop. At the reception, during a pause between the dinner and the dancing, as Marie Blanche and Denis cut their wedding cake, Hervey burst into the hall, a gun blazing in his hands. A moment later Marie Blanche lay bloody and dying in her wedding gown. A bullet entered Denis O'Brien's spine, leaving him paralyzed for the rest of his life. Hervey hanged himself that evening in the tool shed behind the comb shop. That was the end of Grenier's Hall as a festive gathering place. The doors were sealed and the windows shuttered. Children shivered as they listened to the story of that day of doom, and always hurried by the abandoned building. Some claimed that on windy nights, when the moon was full, the sounds of moaning and weeping could be heard if you pressed your ear against the front door. It became a Frenchtown tradition for children to listen at the door at midnight on the night of a full moon as a rite of passage. Before my turn arrived, however, Grenier's Hall was given a reprieve and began a new existence. I was in the 7th grade, the year that Nicole Reynard came into my life, when the hall's transformation began. People rushed to the site one Saturday morning as word spread through the streets that carpenters and painters were attacking the building in a frenzy of activity. I rushed to the scene and watched in amazement as trucks and vans, emblazoned with City of Monument, disgorged teams of workmen who, we learned, had been hired under a new municipal program. In the next few days the men worked frantically, scraping and painting, replacing doors and windows, tarring the roof. But the work was haphazard. Workers dropped hammers, spilled paint, stumbled over each other, and occasionally pulled brown paper bags from their pockets and took quick gulps from hidden bottles. "It's like watching a Marx Brothers movie," said Eugene Rouleau, the bush barber, whose tongue was as sharp as his razor. When the workers finally completed the job, the building still looked unfinished. The white paint didn't completely cover the dark patches of mildew on the clapboards, and the shutters sagged next to the windows. "Look!" someone called. As we watched, the sign, which read Frenchtown Rec Centre, slid from its place above the front entrance, until it hung at a drunken angle above the door. "It's still a bad luck place," Albert Laurier of Laurier's drugstore said. People nodded their heads in agreement, remembering the wedding reception of Marie Blanche-Tourraine. That night someone crossed out the words on the sign and replaced them with Rec Centre, WRECK, in bright red paint. Although the sign was restored to its original wording, the place was known forever as the WRECK Centre to the people of Frenchtown. The centre opened its doors the day after St. Jude's parochial school closed for summer vacation. I stood with the other kids at 9 o'clock in the June morning in front of the building. A tall, slim man stepped into view, a lock of blonde hair tumbling over his forehead, a smile that revealed dazzling movie star teeth. "Good morning," he said. "My name is Larry LaSalle." "Is that his real name?" Joey LeBlanc asked in a whisper that carried over the crowd. He was often punished by the nuns for talking out of turn. "That's right. It's real," Larry LaSalle said, and for some reason the crowd applauded. Larry LaSalle had the broad shoulders of an athlete and the narrow hips of a dancer. He was both. He swung the bat with authority as he hit home runs in games at the sandlot next door, and later led us through vigorous exercises and calisthenics. He was also a dancer with a touch of Fred Astaire in his walk. His feet barely touched the floor. He could tap dance with machine gun speed and make daring leaps across the stage. But he was most of all a teacher, leading classes in dancing, arts and crafts, organizing a choral group, directing musical shows. The rec center became my headquarters in the 7th and 8th grades, a place away from the sidewalks and empty lots of Frenchtown. I'd never been a hero in such places, too short and uncoordinated for baseball, and too timid to join the gangs that hung around the street corners. I had no best friend, although Joey LeBlanc, who lived on the first floor of my three-decker, often went with me to the Plymouth on Saturday afternoons. He kept up a steady commentary during the movie, like a radio announcer describing the action. He didn't like to read, and I loved roaming the stacks of the Monument Public Library, where I discovered Ernest Hemingway and Thomas Wolfe and Jack London, and rushed home with an armful of books. Home was now the tenement where I lived with my Uncle Louis, my father's brother, a silent giant of a man who was a yardman at the Monument comb shop. He took me in after my father died, cooked our meals and cleaned the apartment. He drank 3 bottles of beer every night while listening to the radio, volume turned low, until his bedtime at 11 o'clock. He seldom spoke, but I never doubted his affection. He patted me on the head passing by as I read my books at the kitchen table, and listened solemnly as I told him my day at school, a duty he required every night at supper. "You're a good boy, Francis," he'd tell me as he handed over my 50-cent allowance every Friday night. The loneliness of the tenement drove me to the rec center after school and weekends. Without talent for singing or dancing or arts and crafts, I finally joined in Callisthenics after Larry LaSalle made a huge speech urging everyone to participate in at least one activity. I picked a spot in the back row to avoid calling attention to myself, and Larry LaSalle didn't embarrass me by calling me to the front row where the shorter kids belonged. Larry LaSalle was everywhere in the center, showing how strips of leather could be made into keychains, old wine jugs into lamps, lumps of clay into ashtrays. He tamed the notorious schoolyard bully, Butch Bartoneau, convincing him that he could sing, coaching him patiently day after day until Butch's version of the Dying Cowboy brought tears to the eyes of everyone in the rec center's first musical production, Autumn Leaves. "But he still beats up kids in the schoolyard," Joey LeBlanc observed. Under Larry LaSalle's guidance, Edna Beauchene, tall and gawky and shy, became the hit of the show. Dressed like a barman, dancing an intricate routine with ash cans, winning applause like a Broadway star. "You're all stars," Larry LaSalle always told us. Rumors told us that Larry LaSalle had also been a star, performing in nightclubs in New York and Chicago. Someone brought in a faded newspaper clipping showing him in a tuxedo, standing beside a nightclub placard that read, "Starring Larry LaSalle." We knew little about him, however, and he discouraged questions. We knew that he was born in Frenchtown, and his family left to seek their fortunes elsewhere. Larry had taken dance lessons at Madame Toussaint's studio downtown as a boy, and had won first prize in an amateur contest at Monument City Hall when he was 9 or 10. Why did he turn his back on show business and return to Frenchtown? No one dared to ask him, although there were dark hints that he had gotten into trouble in New York City, a rumor Joey LeBlanc delighted in repeating with raised eyebrows and a knowing look. Dazzled by his talent and his energy, none of us dwelt on the rumors. In fact, the air of mystery that surrounded him added to his glamour. He was our champion, and we were happy to be in his presence. Nicole Reynard began coming to the center that first winter and joined the dancing club. She had taken lessons in Albany and instantly caught the attention of Larry LaSalle. I'd watch her glide across the floor, catching flashes of her white thighs as she twisted and turned. She seemed to exist in a world of her own, like a rare specimen, bird-like and graceful as she danced, separate from the rest of the dancers. She didn't join any of the classes or do exercises or crafts, and would simply leave when the dance classes were over. One day, as she headed for the exit, drops of perspiration on her forehead like raindrops on white porcelain, she said, "Hello, Francis." That same strange teasing in her voice I'd heard when she warned me about falling off the banister. I gulped and coughed, managed to utter "hello," but was unable to bring her name to my lips. She paused, as if to say more, our eyes meeting in the same connection I'd felt in Sister Mathilde's classroom. A moment later, she was gone, leaving behind a sweet fragrance mixed with the musky smell of her perspiration and the after-image of her body leaping through the air. Oh, she didn't remind me of St. Therese any more, but of the girls in certain magazines at Laurier's drugstore that set my heart racing and made my knees liquid. Nicole Reynard's visit to the rec center made my life there complete. That's why Joey LeBlanc angered me when he said he could feel that old doom hanging over the place. "You talk too much," I said, slamming the door behind me as we left the center one afternoon. "Doom," he pronounced. "Wait and see." Shivering now, as the rain begins to fall, I turn away from the rec center, knowing that poor Joey LeBlanc, who died on a beach on Iowa Jima in the South Pacific, had been right after all.